Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the NIS cast. As always, we are coming straight from the Tagamoa campus, and today we have a very special guest, someone that I'm sure the entire school is very interested in knowing more about, because he may just surprise you. Some of you know him as the man who gives you detentions, but today we're diving deep, and welcome to the show, the Tagamoa campus Dean of Students, Mr. Damian. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Actually, if I could just say something real quick.
Sure.
I've always wanted to do something like this with the students and with teachers, and I never had the opportunity to do it. And I'm so glad to see someone pick up that ball and run with it, and then the opportunity to take up that opportunity. So I'm really happy to see you doing this, and I'm really happy to be part of it.
Thank you so much. And we were just speaking, like, when we first had this idea, and I told you you'd be one of the first guests that we have, like top 5 guests, because I think you're one of the people that I'm sure the entire campus is interested in knowing more about.
Well, you're very kind.
Right? Because first, since we're on the topic, can you actually tell us more about that role as your Dean of Students? Like, what's your ideology behind that?
Sure. When I was first presented with the idea of being a Dean of Students, this was me moving away from academics and then being offered a chance to do something in the way of education and teaching, but not geared towards or caught into academics or lesson plans, being more open to being able to help students. For example, helping students make better decisions, helping students understand, the mistakes they made and why they made them, and what they could do differently, how to repair the mistakes they make. So the Dean of Students office really is, for me, it's more than just an office of punishment or discipline. For me, it's more of an office that has opportunities, even for students who may get into trouble often or may get into circumstances often. It should be more of a place for them to find a chance to learn from those mistakes, a chance to find better ways to become a better person. Because I always feel that schools are more community-centered, and that it's not just learning book smarts, it's also learning how to be a functioning member of a society or community, which is, this is our community here.
So you think that for any student, they shouldn't be scared of the Dean of Students office. It welcomes any student to come in, and basically, it's like a safe place for them to communicate.
Yes, I mean, it definitely is a safe environment, because if students have issues, they should feel free to come to us. I mean, I have a wider staff now. I've got Ms. Kathleen, I've got Ms. Mena, and all 3 of us are there to support the students, even if they make mistakes. We will be more than happy to remind them they made mistakes, help them, go through the consequences of those actions, but also be there to support them and help them, to push them to make better decisions and become better members of their community.
Of course. And you quickly mentioned that you were in academics before. Can you tell us about that? Because you were a social studies teacher, right?
Well, a long time ago, going back almost 10 years now, when I first came to the school, I was actually a core teacher for 4th grade. So I taught all 4 core subjects, math, science, English, social studies. And I said all 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to make sure, because you get a little bit of a brain pause there, and
That's
you remember. Yeah. So I taught all 4 of those subjects, and of course, naturally, I always apologize to the students about English, because English is in all 4 of those subjects, and English is a very difficult language to learn, because we give you rules and then we tell you don't follow them in this area or follow them in that area.
Exactly.
So it was fun, but I loved teaching the 4th grade. But then I wanted to move into something more. And that's when I've always been trained as a social studies teacher, going back into college, going back to my undergrad and my graduate years. And so I moved into the middle school and became an HOD of the social studies department and taught history.
All right. That would have been interesting to see. I would have loved to actually see that, but it was behind my time when I came.
Maybe in quarter 4 I'll make a special guest appearance and teach one lesson.
Sure, maybe I'll be absent one day, or I'll just
But that defeats the purpose. You want to see me do it. So if you're absent, then you can't see me do it.
But then I get a day to rest.
This is true. Yes, you get a day's rest. That's right.
Okay, you have a very interesting philosophy that you told us about before, which is you don't think that even when you have to give out punishments to students, you don't think that any of these students, any of these children are your enemy, and they're not the enemies of any teacher, of course.
Yes,
elaborate more on that.
Yes, actually, there's a phrase behind that, or actually a quote, and that actually came from my wife, Ms. Amir, who's the director of curriculum and instruction. She always likes to say, "No child under the age of 18 is my enemy." So yes, students will always make mistakes. Students will always make decisions that might be the wrong decisions, but it doesn't necessarily make them my enemy. I will always support them, no matter how much they drive me crazy. I will always support them because they're learning, and that's the part of the learning process, is that sometimes we can't understand how a scientific method works until we make an experiment in the classroom that uses the scientific practice. And then even making mistakes along the way helps us understand more so the theory behind what we're studying. And that goes the same for being in the community and making mistakes. Sometimes you can't learn from people saying, don't do this, this is wrong. Sometimes you need the example of making that mistake to see it and then realize, oh, now I understand why it's a mistake.
That's very, very true. And do you have any story that you, or any experience that you have of maybe a difficult student that you once had, or someone who got in trouble, or someone that you had to give a lot of punishments to, and then later on they actually understood that this was better? And
oh yeah, there's quite a few students I've worked with over the years. I've been a dean of students, I would say, for about close to 6 years now. I think 5 or 6 years now. And in that time, I've seen students come into the high school and graduate. And some of those students were students that had difficulties, had made mistakes in the past. And as they grew older, I tried my best to show them perspective.
Okay.
And of course, I always tell students that their perspective is very biased, which is natural. And that's not any kind of a throwing shade at them or anything like that. What it is that it's the truth. When you're younger, you always have your perspective and you're biased towards it. And I want them to learn that there's more than one perspective. It's not just what you see and what you think is right. You have to understand that other people that are involved in your circumstance might be seeing something different.
Of course.
And you have to be open to the idea that they're seeing something that to them might be offensive or might be hurtful or might be the incorrect way to handle a situation. Yeah. And so what you want to do is you really want to learn from that and open up to that constructive criticism. And I've seen students slowly, take on that constructive criticism to the point where as they get older and they get into the senior year, they're making better decisions and they're saying, you know what, I understand. I get that I owe you a detention. I understand that, but I get now why I made that mistake. Let me go talk to them. I want to apologize. And this is on their own merit, without me doing any kind of pushing them to do this. And also some students, they will make mistakes and then down the road, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. There was one example I wanted to give you as well. Well, anyway, either way, the perspective is the biggest thing.
They realize it on their own, and they grow as people. So that's like a very humanitarian job to do, and I think that makes it all worth it, right? And
actually, now I remember what it is. Also, students who sometimes get very passionate about how they feel, and when they feel like they're not being listened to, or they have a perspective that should be heard, they get very, very passionate, which ends up meaning that they're going to get very confrontational, get a little bit hot-headed. And some of the students, I've taught them, especially now that they're seniors, they do this on their own, to come to me to calm down.
Okay.
So which is a good thing, because then they can come to me and they can say, listen, Mr. Damian, can I have like 2 minutes in your office? And I always tell them they're welcome to come in, tell me what's going on, or just sit quietly to calm down, or to come in and vent and let it out. And I'll always have an open ear for them. And I've actually had some students that are able to now on their own judge that and know when they need to remove themselves from a situation to calm down, to prevent them from getting into a bigger situation, which is also a huge improvement.
That's amazing. Okay, well, on the other side of that, did you get into a lot of trouble when you were at school?
Actually, not really, no. I think I was, even though I looked like a really big guy, I was always the one that was bullied.
Okay.
I was bullied a lot from elementary school into high school. High school, towards the end of it, people stopped because we all got a little bit older. Yeah. And we got to a status quo where I left them alone, they left me alone. But no, like I was always very wary, very cautious. Bit of a Boy Scout kind of good guy, very naive. I used to always fall for things all the time. But and now I'm a little wiser due to my own mistakes and learning from my own mistakes. But yeah, no, I wasn't the kind of person that got into a lot of trouble.
And I think that's prepared you for where you are now, I guess.
Possibly. I mean, I think there's a lot of things, a lot of factors and variables that lead me to the directions I go, and I'm only hoping that down the road here at the school I can take on other tasks and other areas to help other people become better at what they're doing, and teach them through either my my own experiences, my own wisdom, my own training to my own mistakes, and helping them learn from my own mistakes. You need to do it this way because trust me, I did it this way. I made a mistake. This is where it works better.
And that's always the way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next question, because I think something that a lot of students and teachers and everyone is very interested in is that you're an American citizen, all right, and you're living here in Egypt full time.
Yeah.
What's that experience like? And what has it been like at the beginning of?
Well, as of January, I've been here for 10 years.
Okay.
I have to say, I was someone that studied cultural anthropology in college. It was a passion of mine. It was something I got really into. And to have the prospect of coming to another country and experiencing it was very exciting to me. Now, a lot of people always say to me, oh, you're very brave for doing that, because I never really traveled a lot. The only foreign country I've ever been to was Canada, really, from America. Yeah. And a lot of people would make fun of me for getting my passport and going straight to Egypt. But more so, it was the opportunity. It was exciting. And a lot of people would be daunted, and I can understand that. But for me, I was very lucky because my wife, Miss Amira, she was already here, and we've been friends for a long time. And what was great was that she was able to help me feel comfortable. So that having her there and her family being so supportive really made it easy for that transition to move here. And so with saying that, it's been an amazing experience. And I always feel as an American, even though America is very much a diverse community, I feel that even being across the ocean, we tend to be a little bit isolated. So for people to really learn more about these cultures and learn more about, for example, the Islamic culture, especially with America, and in the past, America has a lot of,
stereotypes about
right, exactly. It's great for people to get out there and see different countries and meet different people. One of the things was when I first came here to visit Egypt, it was during Ramadan, and it was such a beautiful experience. Yeah. It was a beautiful experience, and just seeing everybody being generous. That's one of the things that really caught me with the Islamic faith was the generosity, and that really hit home for me. And just seeing the tables and people sharing food and the feeling you get from Ramadan, it really made me fall in love with this country.
You were about to see it again after tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'll be fasting with everybody else. Yep.
Do you have any experience at the beginning when you first came to Egypt where you look back now and think, because I guess everyone who's a foreigner and comes here, there's a bit of a learning curve.
Of course. Yeah.
And do you have anything where you look back now and think, wow, that was funny, or I shouldn't have done that, or like tourists always, when they come here, there's always experiences where it's like it takes time to get used to the sense of humor of the Egyptians and the way that we deal with things and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, one of the funniest moments for me was when I first came here, was seeing people arguing and me thinking that, as a good Samaritan bystander, watching them arguing, thinking, oh my God, they're in a fight, they're arguing, and then turns out they're just having a conversation. So so they had to get used to. There are a lot of things I could look back on any experience and say, oh, I could have done that better. I think that's part of the human trait, is that you always look back and go, yeah, I could have done that better, or I would have done something differently. But then again, also, I wouldn't have changed a thing, because I always feel that things happen for certain reasons and experiences happen for certain things. Just like our students,
of course,
you have to make mistakes to learn.
Yeah.
And be humble enough to be like, oh, yeah, I made a mistake. I should have said that, or I should have done it, or I misunderstood that. I'm sorry. Thank you for teaching me. And I think that's the thing that a lot of Americans need to embrace more, especially when they go abroad, is that they have to accept the idea. And this is really coming from my training in culture and anthropology in college, is that acceptance of you're going to see things that are different. You're going to experience things that are different. People have different ways of looking at life. You need to be open to that, and also be aware that it's going to, it might be a learning curve for you, Of course. Yeah.
So one thing that I think everyone will be most interested in knowing about is that even though you said that you play the good cop still, even though you're the discipline authority of the school, the students have no idea that you are a massive geek.
Yes. I'm a nerd and a geek.
Both.
Children, look up the definition of both of those, because I'm telling you there's a difference between both. And I am both, yes.
I think because we have students that are interested in video games, interested in comics and animation, anime, movies, board games, and that all of that is in your interests.
Yes.
Can you tell us all about your geek hobbies?
Oh man, I am an old school video gamer. I go back to like Nintendo and Genesis and stuff like that, even Atari. I'm an old person. We're not going to talk about how old I am. But one of the things that really touched me in my interest and really got me being creative was everything that was unplugged. Okay. So everything that was tabletop. In other words, things like Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing games, miniature games, board games, things like this. And even though I do follow or dabble back into going back into like video games, I am a very, very strong advocate for unplugging and just going for the tabletop. So that I dabble in a variety of different things.
And you even paint your own miniatures, and you have your own sets of
yes, I do.
Board games. And
yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Can you tell us, even you have your own YouTube channel? You can shout that out.
Yes, definitely. I'll give you the link for the description for the video. It'll be my Beacons link. I have a Beacon link tree that shows you all my social media accounts and my YouTube channel. I am an old school painter. I started painting models and miniatures going back into the early 90s. Again, very old. We're not going to talk about my age. I've been painting on and off for a very long time. Now I'm painting as of, I would say about maybe 5 years ago, I'm painting more full-time now. And I really have put my efforts and put my interest into painting. It was always a passion of mine, but with travel and coming to a new country and starting over with things, I had let it slide for a long time. And then I found a lot of time on my hands, and I started watching other painters on YouTube and on Twitch, and it got me back into the love of that, and I dived in very deeply. So
we'll put up some pictures and some footage of some of the stuff that you paint, because
sure,
it's amazing. And you said that you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons. I think that's also something that we have some students who are very interested in.
Right.
It's,
and what's nice is that it's also because of things like Stranger Things that brought D&D into the light. And D&D actually has been really becoming more and more less of like a secret, nerdy thing, and becoming more in the light of more publicity and commercialization, which is nice. It's a little scary, but it's nice to see that it's actually out there in the open again. Yeah.
Yeah, cool kids play video games and D&D and read comics.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We're very.
You got it from the man himself.
Yes.
Okay, what about, because you just, before we started this, you were also talking about some comic stuff, because again, we have a ton of students who love comic books and superheroes, and with the movies happening now, can you tell us about some of your favorite stuff in that area?
Are we talking about like the stuff I used to read when I was like old school,
just
stuff,
like basic
or like new
superhero
stuff?
comic book stuff that you think could really, you find like a connection with some of the students?
All right, kids. Mr. Damian's going to school you on some old school comics. I was a fan of comics going back to the 80s. Again, we're not going to talk about my age. It's very old.
You don't look a day over 22.
I loved, I'd say in the beginning I loved Marvel when I was younger, like Spider-Man, things like that. But as I started growing older, I started getting more into DC, because I always felt that DC had the better writers and the better story arcs.
All team DC here.
Yeah, exactly. The DC comics, I mean, don't get me wrong, like what Marvel has done, there's issues of Marvel I love. There are storylines of Marvel I love. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is 4-star. I'm very impressed with it. The DC Toonverse is equal to the Marvel, is equal to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the DC Movieverse is seriously lacking, and I'm hoping that this new change will do well. But I used to read titles that I'm sure many of you never heard of, like Sleepwalker, which I think was a Marvel comic. So I read comics like that. I read comics that were independent companies, like doing stuff like Exo Manowar and Turok the Dinosaur Hunter.
Everybody's listening is like,
what is this stuff? I'm telling you, I'm schooling you children right now on good comics.
We know Spider-Man. You don't know Exo Manowar.
Exo Manowar, what are you talking about? And I even got into Image comics when they first came out. And I jumped into it, and I seriously regret that because it was no comic collecting value in it. But it was great titles like Wildcats and things like that. But nowadays, I do love the DC comics. I do love the Justice League and Batman. I think the characters have really fleshed out a lot. I always recommend to people that are trying to get into DC Comics, I always recommend the story arc of Identity Crisis. That is my all-time favorite. I think the writing is spot on. The major DC A-list characters are in the background. All of the B-list characters in the foreground. So you get more from all these other characters that are minor. And you get more feeling and emotion for them. And it just has an amazing beginning, middle, and end. And you can feel that there was something planned and written out. Like you don't feel like it's going on forever and forever. And they're like, oh, we need to end it soon because we don't know what we're going to do next. You know, you feel like there's a beginning and middle end. It's just the perfect story arc.
Of course. Well, there you have it, kids. You know, Mr. Damian is one of you. You know, he's just he
in more ways than one.
Yeah. So do you have any like final message that you would like to send to all of your students and everybody in the school? Or just a universal message that you'd like to send out into the world?
Oh God, there's so many I can tell you right now. Well, for our students listening, I would definitely say embrace your creativity, embrace your art, embrace your passion. Be open to learning from different places, because you'll get lessons that are even sometimes outside of school. You'll get lessons that you never expected, and you'll meet people that you never expected. And I just want them to embrace the idea that NIS wants them to be these open-minded citizens that in the future will discover new things and rediscover things that we all think are wonderful and beautiful. And I just want them to grow from experiences and just be open and embrace it and you know, use their voices, ask questions, you know, talk about what drives you. I mean, our very motto at NIS is passion drives us. So I want to see them embrace their own passion and let it drive them and introduce it to us. You know, we're not all here as these individuals that are unapproachable. You know, like you and I are talking about geek stuff for all the geek people out there. Boring. Right, yeah. And I'm sure you can talk to a lot of wonderful teachers and wonderful administrators.
More than welcome to listen.
Right, that are very human and have very human likes and dislikes, and they're going to realize they can connect to us. And I want them to realize that they have a family here, and this place is a community that they can embrace.
That's a wonderful sentiment, and I think that's an amazing place to send off. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
I love listening to your analysis of things, and I love listening to your experience on so many things, and I think everybody and our students, even teachers, everybody will have appreciated that so much. So
thank you so much.
And
thank you
to everyone listening. And because when this goes up, we'll be in Ramadan, so happy Ramadan to everyone.
Happy Ramadan. Ramadan Kareem.
We'll see you again hopefully next week. Thank you so much.
Take care.